Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. For this review, Duncan Kyle and myself have been checking out the new album from Detroit metal quartet Plague Years. The band's new album, Circle of Darkness, will be released on September 18th on eOne Music. This is the band's debut full-length album, and it follows up their 2018 EP Unholy Infestation. This album is 10 tracks long and has a running time of 43 minutes. So, I don't know about you guys. The first thing that hit me, don't even start.
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
The first thing that I was actually going to say was this album has a very classic kind of feel about it, and I think that's partly because of the production.
Yes.
It's done by a guy called Arthur Risk, which we've spoke about this guy before.
He's like on every other fucking review. This guy must be literally just fucking pumping albums out.
Yeah. He's managed to kind of capture that old school kind of thrash meets death metal vibe. Very reminiscent of bands like Slayer, Obituary.
Who's the Slayer
Kreator.
of which you speak?
Even a wee bit of like early Sepultura as well. And I must admit, I actually really like the kind of like character of this album. It feels very, it's got a very kind of authentic kind of feel about it. You know, the instruments feel it sound very naturally heavy. The guitars don't sound like they're like overly processed. You know, that's a lot of these kind of modern productions. The guitars has just got the kind of life processed out of them. And I think this is something that Arthur Risk is actually very good at. We reviewed the last release from Xibalba,
yes,
a few months back, which he also did. You know, it's also got a very kind of like organic sound to it as well. You know, it's still a little rough around the edges, not in a bad way, but it kind of adds this grain that you don't get from a lot of modern productions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think there's, to me, it's weird because we're bulk recording tonight, ladies and gents, so chances are you may hear Dave's Rona-ridden voice somewhere else on another review, which will tell you, I'll basically timestamp to when a lot of these were recorded. But there is another band that will be in this cluster of reviews, which I also think has a very specifically timely sound and production on them, which I think is, and to kind of double down on what you say, is something we are missing these days. Not that I want to get my soapbox and put on the old man cap, but there is a kind of a school of thought amongst certain guitarists nowadays that more filters and more equalizers and, you know, more quantize and all the rest gives you a punchier sound, and it does, but I think it at times makes your guitar sound like everyone else using the same filter, whereas there's a certain kind of warmth, disgusting warmth that comes from a sound like Plague Years specifically have across the entire production, and it very much suits the sound they're going for. And I don't think it's even done necessarily in a kind of, you know, we want to sound like, I'm going to say it, Slayer on, you know, on the South of Heaven production. That's the sound we want for, and everything's catered around that. It just sounds like this is how this band sounds in a rehearsal studio. You know what I mean? It has a very organic, warm, rich kind of production on it, which feels very authentic to kind of like the 90s specifically. But it really, really, I think it's the first thing that I noticed, and it's the first thing that grabbed my attention about the band before I was even really concentrating on the riffs or, you know, what the drummer was doing, vocals or anything. Was I listened to that, I was like, oh yeah, like because it just sounds so different from what we're hearing at the moment. And there's I mean, if you're of a certain age and you have a certain leaning towards a particular era of music, stuff like that will instantly grab your attention because it makes you feel like you're stumbling onto another band the way you used to stumble into bands, you know, like at a record shop or passing around CDs or tapes or whatever. And Plague Years have that in spades. I mean, like across the board. They also have a sound which is very reminiscent of bands of that era. And whilst, I mean, the thing is though, the more I'm thinking about it, because I originally wanted to kind of go, well, they do sound, I mean, Slayer is the apt comparison. And I think you're right, but I think there are shades of other bands that are mostly Slayer influenced, if we're honest. But there's tons of other bands that, you know, desperately want to sound like Slayer, and they've made careers off them as well. I think Plague Years don't cynically sound like they want to sound like Slayer, and the reason that I say that is it could be very easy for a band like this to go and get a vocalist that sounds like a Tom Araya. They're a dime a dozen. And to be honest, their guitar solos, as much as this might get my face spat on by Slayer fans, the guitar solos in Plague Years, better, sorry. They're better because they're tonally right. And there's a variety in here as well that I don't necessarily think you get on, like Slayer later day. Really had, like, their albums all sounded one sound albums, and Plague Years mix it up. By the time you hit a track like Eternal Life, which is a 4-track, there's a noticeable like shift in this is mid-range tempo, and that's what we're going for, where the previous songs have been about kind of breakneck speed, fast triple picking, and all the rest. By the time they get to that, they're like, right, this is the point in the album where we change the pace, this is where we bring it down, this is where we focus on the heavy. And they do that really well throughout the album. It's almost they know exactly the point where, like, we're kind of overdoing this kind of rhythm or this type of pace. And at this point, this song should change that, or this section should move us out that. So, I mean, I appreciated that about them. I think they've got a good grasp on not only what they're doing realistically as a band and songwriters, but they've got a good grasp of exactly when something might be becoming a bit too repetitive or boring, and they switch out it very, very quickly. That's not to say they won't come back to it, but they switch out it quickly, and I appreciate that. I think that's another thing where people are like, this is a bitchin' riff, let's play it to the end. Which I get that, I understand that, but from a listener point of view, that can become a bit, not dull, but you know what I mean, it can grate on you a little bit. And I think Plague Years have actually, there's a bit of quality control there in the way they construct their songs.
I think I got the feeling that a lot or most of the material in this album felt very much like it was made for live shows. Like there's a lot of tracks on this release that begin with a lot of aggression, or rapid fire riffs, or sometimes just an isolated guitar that kicks a track off. Other times the whole band jump in and it's kind of hitting you like a battering ram. But either formula kind of does the trick, and I'm sure those tracks like Witness Hell or the title track will 100% amp up a crowd, at a live show, no doubts. But then on the flip side of that, you've also got these kind of more kind of groove orientated tracks like Paradox of Hell or Eternal Fire, as you were talking about, that just kind of ooze heaviness,
Yeah.
And I must admit the rhythm and tone of Eternal Fire did put me in mind of Shibaba's groovier side a little bit. One of my highlights, though, I think, was a track called World in Blood. It comes kind of near the end of the release. And for me, it was one of the most kind of memorable tracks on the album.
Oh, dear. The Rona has struck again, ladies and gents. He's never going to make it through this review.
Oh, my God.
It's going to bring it back, though.
I think it's spread.
See what he does for his art, ladies and gents. He puts himself in harm's way, risking his voice tomorrow to give you the reviews.
Oh, I thought I was gone there.
Don't go into the light, Dave. Don't go into the light.
That didn't make me laugh.
Yeah.
Turn it off.
Unless you're going to come back as a ghost from Ghost and do sexy pottery with me.
No one does that better than the Swayze. Come on.
This is true.
What was I saying? Yeah,
World in Blood.
World in Blood. Sorry. Yeah, it comes near the end of the release. Love the switch up in tempo and rhythm throughout the track, but more than that, I loved the little kind of venture into melody from the vocalist. Tim Engelhardt. Vocally, this album plays it fairly straight for the most part. It's like no frills, kind of blunt force trauma, but I thought that little addition of melody on that track, and also on a track called Evil One, really stuck in my head after the album had finished. And this is something that I went back and listened to the previous EP, and it's something that they don't really do on that last EP. So it was quite nice to see that they're kind of trying new things on Circle of Darkness. Kyle, what about yourself? What did you think?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying about it. Like, it came in pretty straight and pretty like, okay, I know where these guys are coming from. I know where they're going. I know what they like. Definitely, I know which band that they have ripped a lot off. Been inspired by, and and I enjoyed the switch ups and the tempo changes and that stuff. Like you said, around track 4 and 5, they had some things like that. And there was a couple of production issues that was like weird for me. Like when the vocal came in on the first track, I was like, that's a lot of reverb. Oh my god. I probably wouldn't have made that choice. To each their own and everything, and the band clearly liked it, and it kind of worked in a weird way, but I probably still would have gone back from that. I probably would have liked it for about a minute and gone, that's too much, and just dial it back a little bit. It's even if you listen to Slayer and bands of the era, there's not that much reverb on the main vocal. I was like, okay, it was hard for me to get past, but I did, and I got past it. And then I don't know, about track 6 or 7, and I was like, this is starting to get a bit old. I think this should have been an EP. They should have split this into 2 EPs. It would have hit better and lasted longer. I think it was a bit like, okay, guys, what else have you got? It was it's less Diabolus and Musica and Diabolus out the back of my van. It was. Not to say it's bad. There was one thing though I noticed, and you were saying about the raw feeling of the guitars and stuff. Like, I noticed there was a lot of tempo, not issues, but like differences between the 2 takes and left and right on the production guitars. And I was like, you rarely hear that kind of thing anymore. And it really lends itself to music. So if they get a definite plus point from you for that, because it didn't sound edited and too processed, like you said, and it didn't sound like they just whacked a preset on the EQ filter or anything. It didn't sound over compressed. It was very natural sounding, and I really enjoyed that part of it. I noticed all these little, people call them fuck-ups nowadays in production circles, but they're not. It's just how humans play music. How, we're not perfect machines. We play things slightly differently towards each other. The drummer and the bassist and the guitarist are slightly off. And I heard all that, and I was like, this is really good. That's what makes music sound good. So they get some points for that. But still think it should have been about half as long.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I can see where you're coming from in a lot of that, Kyle. I suppose my kind of main, call it a grumble, but is that it's nothing that I haven't heard before. Whilst it's very hard hitting, it does very much what it says on the tin. It's no frills, bludgeoning thrash meets death metal. And if you're looking for an album that'll like punch a hole in your eardrums, then Circle of Darkness is probably most likely for you. But if you're looking for something that's, I don't know, pushing the envelope or bringing fresh ideas to the table, then this might not be that album. Either way, it's still quite enjoyable, and I think they do it very well. I just think for me in 2020, the year of death metal, we've had some unbelievable releases from bands like really taking it to the next level. I didn't get that feeling from this album, but I commend them on making an album that's very authentic towards their chosen genres, and I think it will translate kind of very well into a live environment.
Definitely.
Yeah. What were we thinking rating wise for this one then, guys?
I think I actually dug this more than used to be honest.
Possibly.
Yeah, I think
sounds like it.
Yeah, to me, the thing that stuck out about Plague Years is how different it sounds to the majority of what's come through recently, and that that will win you over quite a bit with me, even though if it isn't the most musically adventurous release that we've covered or listened to in a while. I think they have a solid core and a really good idea of what they want to do, and they're good at what they do. It's nothing trend-setting, it's nothing remarkable, but this once again is the sort of release that I can put on and not have to like do mental gymnastics to work out exactly what's going on, or where I am, or when a song starts or when a song finishes, and there is merit to that. I think in a world where we like the skill level of musicianship is just through the roof, and like every musician on every fourth album is now like fucking shit hot and all the rest. Every now and again I like something just right down the middle, no bullshit, no frills, and gets to the point. There's maybe a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 songs here which feel a bit more filler than anything else, but I kind of dig what they're doing, if I'm honest, and it's a 3.5 from me. I think it's a very solid release that I think if you like any of the aforementioned bands we've mentioned, especially those that have broke up recently, then throw a little bit towards Plague Years. They're a young band in their infancy, if this is their debut, and they've only had an EP out, a couple of years before, you said? So, I mean, they're still a relatively young band, and I'm interested to see where they go. You might find that the next release feels a bit more focused and maybe starts to change a bit kind of tonally once you get that album out that, you know, is the one that has all your influences on it. I'll be interested because the musicianship's there. I mean, the guys can write the guys can write really good groove riffs and, you know, kind of catchy thrash stuff as well. So, I mean, the ingredients is there. It just needs time, I think. So 3.5.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Kyle, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I feel much the same. I didn't dig it quite as much, but I mean, I still think I'm going to give it a 3.5 because of the things I mentioned. Like, it is, they did keep to the era. They knew exactly what they were going for, and they executed it very well. And they had that, you know, authentic humans playing instruments feel to it through the producer. And it's like they didn't time align everything. They didn't play to a drum machine. And I picked up on that. I was like, oh, this is good. So I think 3.5. I can't wait to see what they do more. Yeah. What more they do. If I could do English, that'd be great. I'll join you on that. I'd probably go 3.5 on this as well. As I said, it's still a hard-hitting album. You know, if you're a fan of any of those bands or those styles, I mean, I think it's one that you'll have to check out when it drops. It comes out on September 18th. The album is called Circle of Darkness. I will put some links in the description below to the band's Facebook page. And if the album is up for pre-order and stuff, I'll stick a link in below so you can check it out. Thanks once again for checking out our review, guys. Much appreciated. We'll be back very soon with another album review, but until then, take care and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.